Hello everyone, my name is Keely. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you've been here before. Today I'm going to talk about all the books that I read in the month of August. I read 12 books in the month of August, resulting in 4,481 pages. This was, I believe, my third best month this year. Maybe not so much quality-wise, but quantity-wise it was. I definitely had some not so great books. I did have 3 5-stars, but I also had 3 1-stars, so it kind of balances out. As far as all my ratings go, I had 3 1-star, 0 2-star, 2 3-star, 4 4-star, and 3 5-stars. I also DNF'd 3 books this month, so we're going to go ahead and start with my DNFs. I'll tell you what they were and a little bit about why I DNF'd them. So the first DNF that I had was The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. I DNF'd this one at 60 pages. I really did not like the writing style and I was incredibly bored. So ultimately I had to put it down just because I was so uninterested. My next DNF was A Wicked Magic by Sasha Lawrence. I DNF'd this one at 32%. The reason I DNF'd this one is because there were so many illegal relationships happening. They constantly talked about this 31-year-old man dating 16-year-old high school girls, and there was never really a problem with it. They just kept saying, oh, he dated so-and-so, he dated so-and-so, and they were all high school girls. So I was like, I really don't want to read about that, and I wasn't really invested anyway, so I went ahead and put that one down. And the last book I DNF'd was Truthwitch by Susan Dennard. I DNF'd this one at 40 pages. I didn't really like the writing style. I was very confused, and I just did not care. So moving into the books that I completed this month, I will be talking about them in the order that I read them in. So the first book I read was Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas. This is book 5 in the Throne of Glass series. So I've been talking about this series a lot on my channel recently, and I know many other people have talked about them too, so I really don't think you need a synopsis. Also, the first books basically have nothing to do with the later books in the series. But this was my least favorite book in the Throne of Glass series. I really hate Aelin. I think she is an entitled, spoiled brat, and everybody is such a puppy dog for her, and they do whatever she says. And I hate the way that she treats people like if they have an idea and she didn't come up with it on her own. Suddenly she's angry at them and they are like the worst. She's just so entitled, and I do not get why everybody is so in love with her. Not just readers, but like people in the book are so obsessed with her, and I don't get it. I'm like, be your own person, because everyone is so far up her butt that they will not be individuals, and I literally cannot stand it. I don't think that I like anyone in this series right now. My favorite character, Kale, was not in this book, and so I really missed him because he's one of the only redeeming qualities for me. There's just so much wrong with the series, and I know I am in the very unpopular opinion because a lot of people love the series. A lot of people, I think this is their favorite book, but I gave it 1 star. And I am desperately ready to be finished with this book, and I hope I hope there's a lot of character deaths at the end. I really do, because I cannot stand a lot of these people. The next book I read was The Afterlife of the Party by Marlene Perez, and this is a vampire book, so I was very excited. So we follow high school girls Tansy and Skylar, and Skylar really wants to go to this party to see this band, and Tansy doesn't really want to go, but Skylar's her best friend, so she decides that she will go with her. Turns out the main singer, actually the entire band, are vampires, and they capture Skylar, so Tansy has to basically become a groupie for this band to hunt them down and save her best friend. I did not have a good time reading this book. There were witches, there were vampires, there was so much packed into here that it felt like this book didn't know what it wanted to be. Did it want to be a witch book or did it want to be a vampire book? Because our main character, Tansy, is actually a witch, but then things happen and the magic wasn't actually fleshed out. I had no idea what the magic system was, how it worked, or what anything was. So it just felt like it wasn't fleshed out, that it had no idea where it was going or where the plot wanted to be. So I ended up giving this one 1 out of 5 stars as well, just because I felt like it was doing so much and none of it worked. The next book I read was a reread for me, and that is Legend by Marie Lu. This is book 1 in the Legend series, and this is one of those classic young adult dystopian series. Dystopian is my favorite genre, and so I never get tired of reading it, and I am currently rereading the series because I found out there's a 4th book that I never got to. But if you don't know, we follow 2 perspectives. We follow Day and June, and in this world, this is what used to be the United States of America, but it is now the Republic, and June is like a prodigy child. She is going to be the next greatest Republic soldier, and then Day, on the other hand, was raised in the slums and is the world's most wanted criminal, and their paths kind of converge. It's dystopian. What do you think is going to happen? But I had a great time rereading this series, and it's not my favorite dystopian, but I do still really enjoy it, and I really do love Day as a character. I ended up giving this one 4 stars, which is the same rating as the first time I read it, and that is because I get so aggravated by June's actions in this book. I still like her, don't get me wrong, but some of the things I'm just like, you're so blind, why can't you see how bad the Republic is? But she comes around in the end, and I do really like her, but yes, 4 stars. The next book I picked up I actually read for the Buzzwordathon. The prompt was to read a book with an object in the title. I originally was going to read The 10,000 Doors of January, but since I DNF'd it, I randomly picked up 3 Dark Crowns by Kendara Blake. Crowns is an object, and I've had this one on my shelves forever. So we follow 3 different sisters. They are triplets, and they are each raised in a different kingdom because when they turn 16, they have to fight to the death, and the winner becomes queen. These 3 queens actually have different magical abilities. One of them is an elemental witch, meaning that she can control the weather. Another one is a poisoner, so she is immune to poisons, and the third one is a naturalist, so she can grow plants, and naturalists also have animal familiars, which was probably my favorite power. I loved the idea of animal familiars and seeing all the different people's animal companions. I really, really enjoyed that. I was so surprised by how much I loved this book. I loved all the magical abilities. Those are the 3 main ones, but there are like some other ones that are a little more rare that they talked about. So I thought it was so cool that each one had a different specialty, and I also love that they come together and fight because I love, it's kind of like a game aspect, not like super gamey, but just a little bit, kind of like a tournament type thing, and I really love that aspect. I will say I did give this one 4 stars instead of 5 stars. I really thought I was going to give it 5 stars, but there's a character in here named Joseph, and I really hope he, like, you know, because I despise him. He is despicable, I hate him, I can't stand him, and I really hope he, like, ends it, you know? But yes, 4 stars, and I can't wait to continue with this series. The next book I read was another reread for me, and that is Undivided by Neil Shusterman. This is the 4th and final book in the Unwind dystology. I was rereading the series so I could finally read the short story collection, which was the only thing in the series that I hadn't read yet. Once again, I love this series so much. This is another dystopian series. We follow multiple characters, and in this world, parents can sign an unwind order. Basically, if you are a teenager between the ages of, I believe it's 13 and 18, your parents can have you unwound, which means you are basically taken apart piece by piece, and you are donated to others. So they consider it, you're still living, but you are in a divided state. So we follow Connor, who finds his unwind order, and he goes AWOL, he runs away. We also find Risa, who is a ward of the state, and it gets overcrowded in her state home, and so they decide to cut some people out, and she is one of those. And we also follow Lev, and now Lev is a tithe. So in this world, people grow up raising their children to basically tithe them to unwinding, and Lev is one of those, and their paths all cross, and this is the 4th book. Really, really enjoyed it. It has such a great conclusion, and I really do cry every time I read it. But since I love this conclusion so much and this series, I did give this one 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was The Lake by Natasha Preston. So this follows 2 girls named Kayla and Esme, and they are going to this camp to be counselors in training. They previously were campers at this camp when they were very young, and we find out that something terrible happened, but we don't know exactly what happened until later in the book. And as they are counselors in training, they are very worried that people are going to find out what they did. They start getting really scary messages, random things start happening, and they are being watched at this camp, and they realize it might be because of something that they did when they were campers. If you know Natasha Preston, you know that her synopses are always amazing, and her books are not. I don't know why I keep picking them up. I know Haley from Haley Hughes also has this problem where we know they're not going to be good, but yet we're so hopeful that they are going to be good, and they never are. This one, it was actually my least favorite. I think I've read another one, and I liked that one a little bit more. This one I really, really did not like. I hated the characters of Kayla and Esme. They were best friends, but they were awful to each other. Well, at least Esme was awful to Kayla, or the other way around. I can't remember who was who. But yeah, I really did not like their friendship. Usually if something bad happens and y'all are involved and you're scared, your friend's gonna believe you. But in this case, they never believed each other and they thought the other was going crazy, which just did not make sense because it was happening to both of them. I also thought the big secret that happened to them when they were campers was literally not that big of a deal. Like, I really thought it was gonna be a lot bigger than that, and when it was revealed, I was like, there's gotta be more, because why else would things be coming back to haunt them if it wasn't bigger? But yeah, did not enjoy this one. It gave it 1 out of 5 stars. The next book I read as an e-arc from NetGalley, and that is When in Rome by Sarah Adams. We follow super famous pop star Amelia Rose, and she kind of wants to get out of the limelight and take a vacation because she has fallen out of love with singing and she's just really stressed out. And she turns to her favorite film star, Audrey Hepburn, and decides to take one out of her book and go to the nearest town called Rome, which happens to be Rome, Kentucky. And of course, when she gets to Rome, Kentucky, her old car breaks down on the lawn of the super hot bachelor in town, Noah Walker. And Noah Walker is actually a very grumpy pie shop owner. This one was really, really cute. I really liked the grumpy sunshine aspects. Amelia Rose isn't super sunshiny, but she is definitely the happier of the two, but she is also very witty and sassy, and the banter between Noah and Amelia is really great, and I had a great time reading it. It was a lot of fun. But I will say that this is my first Sarah Adams book, and there is not any steam. It is basically fade to black, which is purely my bad because when I saw the cover, I expected a steamy romance novel, but it wasn't. And so I think my expectations were a little off for this book because I definitely don't mind fade to black romance books. But if I had known that's what it was, I think I would have enjoyed it more just because my expectations were a little skewed, but I still had a lot of fun reading it, and I can't wait to read more from Sarah Adams, and I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Unbound by Neil Shusterman. This is the short story collection from the Unwind dystology that I was talking about, so I am finally finished with the Unwind series, and I have been reading it since I was in high school, but once again, I just really needed to read the short story collection, and I had so much fun reading this. Of course, in a short story collection, there are some stories that you love and then some stories that you could do without, and this was the same as that. But I will say, reading some of the stories where all these pieces come together, I literally gasped in some of the stories and I was like, oh my gosh, that's that person, and this is how they're connected to them, and it was just a great time reading it, and I had a lot of fun. But because there were some stories that I was a little bored with, I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I also read is an e-arc from NetGalley, and that is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. So this is a retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's The House of Usher story, I think that's what it's called, and we follow Alex Easton. And when Alex Easton receives a letter that their childhood friend Madeline is dying, they go to the House of Usher and try to help out and see what they can do. When they arrive there, they realize that Madeline really is dying, and that Madeline's brother is just a ball of nerves, and that there is something weird going on with this house. Now, the premise sounds really interesting, and this is kind of a dark gothic story. The vibes and the atmosphere were really great, but the writing was not my favorite. This was my first T. Kingfisher book, and I have heard great things about this author, but I also heard that because this is a retelling of Edgar Allan Poe, the way that T. Kingfisher wrote this story was kind of an homage to Edgar Allan Poe, so I'm not sure if this writing is really how T. Kingfisher writes their other stories, so I'll definitely have to read more from this author and see if it's just the writing I don't like or if it's the writing from this book. But the writing was really boring, and I just really could not get into the story or connect to the characters. But the vibes, the atmosphere was great, but I still gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars just because I was a little bored. The next book I randomly decided to pick up, and that was The School for Good and Evil by Soman Chonani. This is book 1 in this middle grade series, and this is actually becoming a Netflix movie. I think it comes out in November, so I wanted to read it before the movie comes out. So we follow Sophie and Agatha, and Sophie is the beautiful, blonde, wants to be a princess girl, whereas Agatha wears all black, has black hair, lives in a cemetery, and people clearly think that Sophie is good and Agatha is evil. And they live in a world where every 4 years, 2 children get kidnapped, and they believe they get taken to a school and written into fairy tales, but they really don't know what happens. And Sophie just so badly wants to get taken away and become a princess. And Agatha doesn't believe that these stories are true, so when Sophie gets kidnapped, Agatha goes after her and tries to help her, and they both end up at the School for Good and Evil. Sophie always thought she would go to the School for Good, but she ends up at the school for evil, whereas Agatha ends up at the school for good. And this is their story at these two different schools and feeling like they belong in the other school. I had so much fun reading this. I really enjoyed it. Now, Sophie is not my favorite character, but I really like Agatha, and I liked their friendship in this and how much they fought for each other, even though they definitely did have ups and downs. There also is like a trial in here, a tournament kind of game thing, and I really enjoyed it. I loved the different descriptions of the school for good and the school for evil and how different the two were. I flew through this book and I read it in a 24-hour period, and it is like on the longer side. I think it's almost 500 pages, so I like flew through this one and I had such a great time. I absolutely loved it, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I also read as an e-arc from NetGalley, and that is How to Survive Your Murder by Danielle Valentine. So we follow Alice Lawrence, and a year ago, her and her sister went to a high school party on Halloween night, and there is a giant corn maze there, and her sister wants to go through the corn maze, but Alice does not, so she goes and joins the party. After a while, she realizes her sister never showed up, and so she decides to walk through the corn maze, and lo and behold, she becomes the only witness to her sister's murder. So now we are following the day of the trial, and she's about to put this man away in jail forever for murdering her sister. When something happens, she hits her head, she falls down, she gets transported back to a year earlier, and she can now save her sister. Except, messing with the timeline kind of messes with the way things work, and suddenly there is a serial killer out just killing people. This is a slasher, and I loved it so much. I had such a great time. It was just really spooky and great, and like suspenseful and just slasher vibes, and I have realized this year that I love slasher books, and I had a great time reading it. And it was kind of one of those like, if you've seen Happy Death Day, it reminded me so much of that, but like also like slasher movie, you know what I mean? But I really loved Alice as a character. She is also like a true crime fanatic, so it's interesting to see her before her sister is murdered to after, and how her view on true crime changes, because beforehand she wanted to start this true crime podcast, and after she was super close with one of the victims, she realized how nasty true crime podcasts can actually be for victims and their families. I loved the slasher aspects, and this book actually got pretty dark. There were some dark topics that were uncovered, and I ultimately did give this one 5 stars, but it was almost a 4-star because of the way this ended, and I'm just pretending that the end of this book is not how it ended, because it was more of an open-ended story, and I typically don't enjoy open-ended stories. There were also some like major dark plot points that were opened and never resolved, and I feel like they really should have been, and I think that this book could have taken an even better turn, but I loved it regardless, and once again gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And the final book I read in August, because I loved The School for Good and Evil so much, I decided to pick up book 2, A World Without Princes. I haven't done that in a very long time, where I started a series and then quickly picked up the sequel, but I just had to read more from this world. I just loved the first one so much. Unfortunately, this one did not live up to the first one, so I hope the rest of the series gets better than this one. I still enjoyed it and had fun, but it almost felt similar to the first one, a little repetitive. The first one honestly could have ended the way it was and not continued with an entire series, but there are now 6 books in this series, so I am intrigued to see where it goes. However, I did not like Sophie and Agatha's friendship in this one, whereas in the first one I really enjoyed it and how they fought for each other. In this one, you can really see how toxic their friendship is and how they just really need to cut each other off. Sometimes you need to let go of friendships, and in this case this is one of those where they just need to let each other go. I really don't like Sophie in this book, but I really do like Agatha, and I hope that she gets her happy ever after. We still have a few books to go, so hopefully it works out. But yes, I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. Still enjoyed it, but definitely not as much as the first one. So those are all the books that I read in the month of August. Let me know your favorite book that you read this month, and if you have read any of these, I would love to know. But if you have made it this far in the video, go ahead and leave the crown emoji, because 3 dark crowns and The School for Good and Evil, princesses, you know how it goes. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, all my social media links will be down below, and I will see you next time. Bye!